This is my heater. I dare you to hit it.
He'll be sorry.
Want the heater? I'll give it to you.
Basketball, maybe they don't hit it.
A swing and a drive to deep right.
Clear the deck. Cannonball coming.
Left field. It is out of here.
What up? What's good? Baseball Unstitched. We are back. Flax, 1 year of putting out a podcast.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Who lets us do this? It's unbelievable.
We've appreciated all the support we've garnered over the last 52 weeks of talking baseball with you guys. Thank you so much for sticking around with us and riding the bus. Good show for you guys today. We're going to talk a little bit about Adley Rutschman. People were all up on the socials about him when it was announced that teams were reaching out to the Orioles due to their, as we're going to start calling it in Flax's words, surplus in catching depth. We're going to talk a little bit about the WBC roster, the guys who were just announced at the GM meetings, how the WBC roster works, and some of those guys who may fill out other positions that are still currently not obviously filled. And last but not least, Josh Naylor, 5 years, $92 million. We're going to dive a little bit more into that to finish the pod. But as always, Flax, how was your weekend?
Weekend was good. I am back in Denver, back in the office that everybody recognizes. But no, it was good. Got to play some golf with my dad, which is always nice. Just, living life out here. How was your weekend?
Love it. Not bad out here, man. We had a
Try
nice
something
little
new in
busy
year
weekend.
2. I think I'm going to start asking you about your weekend.
Oh, we're flipping it around. No, good
Sure.
weekend.
No,
man.
I mean you can still ask me. I just figure it's. It took me a year to learn common courtesy.
Good weekend for us over here. Watched a lot of football, ate a lot of food. Went over to the. I made some lumpia. Nice little Filipino spring roll dish. That was pretty nice. My mom was proud of me to the point where she posted it on Facebook. That's all you need to know. That's how my weekend went. My mom was proud. So, moving right along to what we normally do. Guys, we're back to the offseason. So rather than This Week in Baseball, we're switching back to what we did for you guys last year, which is giving you the moves that happened this week in baseball. 2 big ones. We've already mentioned one, and I'll talk about it a little bit later in the podcast. Josh Naylor signing a 5-year, $92 million deal with the Seattle Mariners. Again, more on that later. And then Ryan Yarbrough signing a 1-year, $2.5 million deal with the Yankees, providing more depth from a spot start perspective. You're laughing at me. What did I do?
No, not laughing at you. He's an AL East legend. Guy was a Ray for a while. I mean, throws 90 miles an hour from the left side out of the bullpen. He's been doing it forever now. The fact they got him $2.5 million, good on Ryan Yarbrough at this point to be pulling down $2.5 million contracts. The Yankees had him for like 33 innings, I think, last year at the end of 2025. Listen, man, he gets ground balls, he gets weak contact. He's kind of similar to like a Danny Coulomb if you're thinking about like lefties that just like get guys out. It's kind of it's a good move for a team that waited until March to sign a lefty in their bullpen last year. The Yankees were at it early this year.
Yeah, Cashman wasn't waiting. He heard enough about it in 2025. Let me tell you what, guys. So much so that he signed one before 2026. So good move there. I think both teams are going to be getting their money's worth here. Those are the only major moves that happened this week in baseball. We're going to jump right into it. Adley Rutschman. We've talked a lot about the surplus of catching that the Orioles have. Samuel Basayo has come up. Hasn't been maybe the bat that people immediately expected. Welcome to young players at the highest level of baseball. But we do know he signed a long-term extension with the Orioles already. He is going to be a heavy impact, power-first, left-handed bat for them in the long run, or so it would seem. So now we're starting to talk a little bit. When you have 2 high-end catchers the way the Baltimore Orioles do, and Rutschman coming off of a down year in 2025, is he available? Do the Orioles move him? If they do, what is that worth? But let's start with this at the most basic level. Rutschman last year, 90 games, slashed at a 220, 307, 366 line, 9 home runs. He had a 298 WOBA, a 334 XWOBA, a 91 WRC plus. Truly, at the end of the day, Flax, you and I know, worst offensive season. He was not healthy as well. Let's make sure that we remind people of that statement.
No, he was not.
Up front. But but didn't look like himself at the dish for sure. For the most part behind the plate, still a very good defender. We do believe that the health affected him a little bit comparatively over the last couple of years. Adley Rutschman, in his technically due to being a Super 2 second year of arbitration, the Orioles currently have 3 years of team control left of Rutschman. Flax, if you're the Baltimore Orioles in this situation, are you making a move? Are you holding on to Rutschman? How do you feel about the situation from an overall standpoint?
If you saw our Twitter, you know how I feel. Because as soon as I saw the first tweet that said the Orioles are fielding calls, my first thought was picking the phone up and putting it right back down on the hook. It can be a form of fielding a call, because that's what I would do, to be quite honest with you. I mean, listen, he hasn't performed the way you've wanted him to the last couple of years comparatively to what he did in his first season. Comparatively to what he did to the pitching staff as soon as he got there. The Orioles didn't get swept for a 3-game stretch for the first 50 some odd series that he was in the big leagues. There's a real impact that he has on the bench as a leader of that team, something they struggled to find last year, something that's tough to be when you're not on the field consistently, which is what he was dealing with last year. I don't know. I mean, it's a tough conversation. I don't think the Orioles should even be having the conversation with anybody. I think the idea should be that he's your number one guy no matter what. He's a little bit more seasoned. He clearly has the high value impact when he is healthy. And I think Mike Elias sees that same thing. I think his quote the other day at the GM meetings was, if we're talking full health, Adley is back there as much as he and we are willing to do that. It's not 7 days a week. Might be a number around 4 or 5, but Adley's our primary guy. He said, I think Sam Basayo caught really well after his call-up, but he's also a really good first baseman, and we think that bat's really going to come on. I think the likelihood is the conversation stops as soon as a guy like Ryan Mountcastle potentially gets traded. That would make more sense if I'm the Orioles. That's a guy that I would call on because his value is going to be his value. There hasn't been shown some higher level than what he's produced in the last 3. Adley Rutschman's a guy where you know what the ceiling, or not the ceiling, you know what the floor is now, but the likelihood is if he regresses closer to his level water, you're still getting one of the best catchers in baseball. And a guy who you now still have for the next 3 years of team control on, and potentially could, with the standard of price that Cal Raleigh set in the way that he played this year, a pretty reasonable price to sign him when it's time to try and get an extension done if he plays to that level.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you here. I think, and this is just, I'm Mr. Roster Construction, so, I will always die on the hill that everybody's available for the right price, but that right price is just not something that I think I expect people to pay. The biggest thing that I look at here, too, is the changing within how our lineups work in the league. Both sides of the league having a DH have allowed people to really look at having a surplus and catching a little bit different, right? The ability to keep Adley Rutschman a little bit more healthy while also having Basayo behind the plate, who is not a hole in your lineup, I think is a really important portion of this conversation. Both of them have the ability to play at bare minimum, average level backstop behind the plate, which is a huge advantage for the Baltimore Orioles in this scenario. Yeah, is Rutschman going to catch majority of the games, and should he, because of his capabilities, the way the pitching staff reacts to him and the way he game plans? 100%. But Basayo's ability to allow Rutschman to DH from time to time and just swing the bat is an invaluable asset. 2, I think you look at this as we'd be selling Rutschman at the current moment at his lowest point in value of his entire career. I think that's a really important thing to bring up. We're talking about a guy with 3 more years of control while the Orioles are in what is a window. Last year, for ladies and gentlemen, in my personal opinion, very much so a bump in the road. Health hurt them. The inability to have a starting pitching market in the offseason that allowed them to pick through starting pitchers did not help their situation. I do expect things to be much different and then back to looking like a team in the winning window in 2026. Ergo, having Rutschman for 1 more year is probably really important to those winning ways. Listen, if things don't go the way you want, you can still move him next offseason with 2 full years of control, giving somebody else the opportunity to actually have him in the building long enough to potentially keep him long-term if they'd like to.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they just hired a new catching coach. Joe Singley came out of the Miami Marlins organization, was with the Reds for a little bit as well, but has been shown in his time at the major league level to be a really, really good mind around game calling, game control, job behind the dish in general. What his catchers have really excelled in over time is actually getting better at throwing runners out, something that Adley Rutschman really gets knocked on a lot comparatively to his framing and his blocking. He's one of the best blockers in baseball. He frames very well. He also frames certain parts of the zone much better than others. He doesn't throw a lot of guys out. So you bring a guy in who can hopefully help him excel at that piece of the defensive position. By the way, a guy who came from Coastal Carolina, the catching factory of college baseball. And also potentially improve those other skills for Samuel Basallo. Basallo is not great at framing. He moves the glove just a little bit too much. He has not been the best at blocking in his time going up through the minors. But what he does really well is he throws guys out, has an absolute hose behind the plate, and he hits the baseball. Samuel Basallo is the epitome of you find a spot in the lineup for his bat. Adley Rutschman is the epitome of you find a spot in the lineup because he's the heart and soul of your team. Turning a guy like that over somewhere else when he's at his lowest point in value just doesn't make sense to me. We can get into some of the numbers, right? I mean, this past year, he only got to play 90 games. It was a low point for him with the oblique injuries that he dealt with, /220, 307, 366, only hit 9 homers. Still walked at an 11% rate, which felt kind of low for him at the way he took those at-bats. Struck out at his career average rate of 16%. But a lot of the numbers were down. Chase was up. WRC plus was way down. He wasn't as impactful as you'd like him to be, especially with runners in scoring position. His whiff was down, but I would also say his balls in play were not nearly as effective. A lot of fly balls that were lazy outs. If you watched him enough, you just felt like they weren't the same at-bats that you'd expect to see from him. It felt like he was trying to do something for the organization that didn't need to be done or just wasn't getting done by anybody else, which was kind of the way that everybody hit in that lineup last year, especially when it was really reliant on the top 4 or 5 guys and you really didn't have a lot behind it.
Yeah, when you look at baseball too from a statistical standpoint, the expectation, again, we've talked about it a million times in this podcast, is regressing towards the mean, right? So in this scenario for me, the likelihood is that he's going to regress towards the mean, which is better baseball, right? Let's be very clear about what that is. That is better baseball at the plate from Rutschman. So to me, with as many years of control as you have, I think it's just a little bit early to move him. The other piece that we're not talking about from a roster construction perspective is they were able to pick up Caden Bodine in the previous draft. You're talking about a guy who will work his way up the system. And if there's a decision made that Adley is not the long-term guy at that spot, it could simply be because of how well Bodine plays. And then if you can move Rutschman next year with 2 years of control and a much better standing, it might put you in an overall better situation as an organization, right? We know this organization needs arms. We know that Mike Elias goes and gets arms by trading bats. All of these things track really well to how he builds a team and a roster, and I think even he believes the move is too early this season. Now, let's get into real quick what I think it would probably take and look like, which is probably the biggest reason why Rutschman's not going anywhere, and people aren't going to like this, but it's just what it is. If I had to guess, the true cost of Rutschman is a top 3 prospect, a low-end prospect, and probably a guy who can help them in their window at the major league level right now. More than likely, we're talking about an arm who can at the bare minimum spot start, because we know what the Orioles have been hurting with, right? The prospects that we're talking about are going to be arm heavy. Why? Because Elias trades for arms. Don't know how else to put that. This has always been the game plan. He comes from the Astros model. We know this is how they operate. The likelihood of a team giving up 2 to 3 high-end arms for Rutschman right now, after his performances last year, doesn't feel like it's a high possibility. Now, let's again move back to it. Somebody gives the Kings ransom, sure, they're going to move them because they believe in their ability to create a roster. Flax, I don't know how you feel about it, but I really struggle to see a team giving up that type of compensation right now, because the teams who have that type of compensation, there's not a ton of them that are in windows.
these are the same types of compensation that we're talking about for other high-end players that you may only look at getting for 1 year. And we've already talked about why those guys either A, aren't worth spending that much on for other reasons, mainly because it's a 1-year rental, or B, because giving up that much, especially when you have that talent already in your pocket with 5 or 6 years of control left, you don't have to move them yet, right? You could give it a year or two and see how they progress. Realistically, if you think about them the way that you think about them, they haven't hit their peak value yet either. So why would you be giving them up for a guy who you've now seen his floor and know that the reality is that could be what you get? Now, every Orioles fan would sit here and tell you that's probably not the case, but this is baseball. Baseball is really hard, and once you get beaten down into the dirt, it's hard to get back up. And that's what the game has done to Adley Rutschman over the last couple of seasons. So, there's a litany of reasons why it doesn't make sense for the Orioles to get rid of him, but I think there's an even longer list of why so many teams should not be giving up what he is worth at his highest value or even just below his highest value for their own sake of longevity.
So I'll give you my dark horse in acquiring Rutschman, and this is my opinion because there's one space and one team that happens to be in a window and happens to have a player that would actually benefit the Orioles to a high enough level that they'd be willing. And that to me is the Cincinnati Reds.
That's crazy.
If the Reds are to move
I literally
under
was
Green
just thinking them.
in a deal that would swap for Adley Rutschman, I think that there's a possibility we see the move. Because the level of beneficialness to both sides, again, the funnier part is somebody's going to go, Ryan, why wouldn't you talk about Joe Ryan, who we know the Orioles are going to go after? The Twins have zero reason to pick up Adley's contract and what he's going to get paid over the next 3 arbitration years with Super 2s. The one team, in my opinion, that I could see doing it would be a Hunter Green, Adley Rutschman headline trade, and then we figure out the rest.
The only other option I could see from that same team, because I was thinking the Reds too, because I was about to say if we're thinking the same team, I'm going to be shocked. Because the other one I was thinking in my head was like maybe the Nationals, just because of how people feel about Keybear. But I don't think it's the right move for the Nationals. The other guys I could see if you wanted to do multiple guys and didn't want to get rid of Hunter Green is I could see Lodolo and Rhett Lauder both being moved. Rhett Lauder is your pitching prospect in reality for the little amount he's pitched. And Nick Lodolo, who last year really cemented himself as a really solid middle-of-the-rotation arm for a long, consistent period of time. Fairly healthy guy. I think that look from the left-handed side, mixing in with Trevor Rogers in a rotation, would go really, really well. Those are the other 2 guys I could think of if you wanted to move for them. But let's face it, the Reds and the way that they're building things, I think firmly believe in the rotation that they have. If you look at who they put behind the plate consistently last year, that doesn't seem to be something, they'd sit there and say, we made the postseason a year before we were supposed to. We didn't need a headline catcher to get there. Our starting staff really helped us along, and that's because a guy like Brady Singer got better. And now we also have guys like Rhett Lauder coming up now healthy and going to add and improve to that staff.
And let's remember,
if there was a team who wanted an Adley Rutschman, that is absolutely the team that's at the top of the list for me.
And let's remember, too, Tyler Stephenson was a first-round pick for them, right? He's a guy they've really believed in, hasn't been able to stay healthy. So this could be a moot point because you're right. They may simply feel that it's just not a need for them. However,
it could be very similar to what the Orioles feel about Adley Rutschman. This is our guy. We just need him to be healthy, and he'll play at the level we think he can play at.
So let's
foundationally, not that they believe 100%. He could play at that peak.
Let's finish this conversation off with a very simple question. Give me a percentage from 0 to 100 of Adley Rutschman starting the season in a Baltimore Orioles uniform.
I'm gonna say 10%. Oh, that he starts the year in an Orioles? 90%. 90%. But I will caveat it with this. The Orioles have to decide if they're going to tender Alex Jackson a contract by next Tuesday, I believe it is. I think it's the 21st, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm doing my days wrong. They have to tender him a contract. They don't have to agree on a number yet, but he's in arbitration. They basically have to say we are or aren't going to give you a contract. if they say that they're going to tender him a contract, and I don't feel like there's movement on the Mountcastle front, I may slide closer to 80%. But I still don't think I go any further down than 80% because this is a team that used 6 different catchers last year, and I think they'd happily sign 3, knowing that one of them can play a very proficient first base and DH.
Yeah, I'm right around the same spot. I think I'm 80 to 90%. I think that's the right range. I'm hesitant to believe anybody's going to give up the number for him as it pertains to what it would cost to get him. Again, I recognize that what I said might feel high to people, but I think we've really got to dig deep and look at the fact that there's 3 full years of control that we're talking about in this scenario.
Yeah.
A guy who is in arbitration through that time period. Likelihood is his arbitration number never gets higher than about 15 to 16 million, right? If a team's in the window and they want him, they're going to have to give up a lot to give him. There's just not a lot of teams that match up with what the Orioles need and Elias needs, in my opinion, because he's not going to want just prospects in the middle of a run. So
as a separate aside, I think this is going to be the thing that generally pushes everything in baseball contractually is very cyclical in the way that like teams go about things, especially as we've moved into more of the modern era of contracts. I think this will be the thing that pushes us back to talent signing extensions, is that teams will just not trade guys. And because teams will not be able to get what they think a guy is worth, I think they will start to lean back closer to, let me spend the money and at least keep the guy around. And then if I can make the contract creative enough to then move him upon the point of someone taking on money and providing me less in prospects, I will do that. It can extend your window of usability on that player. That's my thought.
I think everybody's going to do that but AJ Preller. All right.
Well, sure, but the guy seems to grow top 10 prospects on trees. So
I know. That was more of
That's
my
really
point.
the question.
That's where I was going with that. I like it. Moving right along here, the WBC team, me and you are excited. Guys, World Baseball Classic is back in 2026. Very, very excited on the podcast. It is, if you are not familiar with it already, arguably the most electric, non-postseason situation that's out there when it comes to baseball. This is our World Cup, in my opinion. We're going to hammer this home. But at the GM meetings, Flax, I don't know if you saw, they did announce 2 more roster spots on that team. Corbin Carroll, Pete Crow Armstrong have both been announced to be on the roster. So the outfield, per se, is there, right? So let's talk about who's on this roster currently. Cal Raleigh, I believe, is Cal Raleigh captaining the team this year? Am I going crazy, or is it Bobby Witt?
No, Aaron Judge.
Is Aaron Judge captaining this year? Oh, because it was Trout the year before. You're correct.
Remember, it was like a whole thing earlier in the year. You got the picture of Judge like holding the hat like this.
Yeah, that's on me. Judge, Aaron Judge, Cal Raleigh, Bobby Witt Jr., Pete Crow Armstrong, Corbin Carroll, Paul Skeens. That's our current roster. Loving what we're doing so far here for the United States of America. For those of you who don't know how these rosters work, because we've asked that question before, it is not a 26-man roster. The WBC rosters are a 30-player roster. Each team must include 14 pitchers and at least 2 catchers. Most teams do tend to carry 3 catchers. So let's put it this way. It gives space for, outside of the 2 catchers and 14 pitchers, 5 bench spots as well. Correct?
Okay, I was curious how you were gonna do that math. That would be, that'd be 30.
Man, every once in a while. That's outside of your starting 9. But let's dig into this a little bit, Flax. Me and you have had conversations for months about how in the world, DeRosa and co. are going to fill out this roster and who's going to start at second and third base. And I'm going to give you some names here for the sake of doing it. Gunnar Henderson, Trey Turner, rookie sensation Jacob Wilson, Bryce Terang, Brendan Donovan, Matt Chapman, the pride of University of Maryland, Brandon Lau, Nico Horner, Austin Riley. I mean, the United States has got some choices here to fill out 2 starting positions. And again, 4 to 5 bench spots, or 4 bench spots as it pertains to position players. What are your thoughts on these guys? And where do you think we might go on this roster for our next announcement?
You know, we were talking, I made a comment to you of it's going to be a shortstop. And you said, based on statistics alone, there are more guys on this list that are not shortstops than you would, really realize. I think the next guy announced, or the guy announced at third base, now that we have talked about it, is probably going to be Austin Riley. Only because I think Austin Riley over the last couple of years has solidified himself as a top talent in baseball, and maybe one of the more underrated talents in baseball. He's just consistent. He shows up, takes good at bats. When he does put bat to ball, it is pounded. Plays a really solid defensive third base. The only other option, if you're looking more defensively, might be Matt Chapman, which I could see that being the direction they go. But I don't know. I really like the Austin Riley piece there for third base. Second base, I still think I go a shortstop. But more than likely, I think it's going to end up being Trey Turner, because Trey Turner has still been one of the better defensive players in baseball, and he's just been there, done that. I think in terms of starters, Team USA wants to win this thing. They're going to get a guy who's been in that spot before, and I think a couple of these other younger guys like a Gunnar Henderson will take up some of those bench spots.
Yeah, I agree with you for the most part here. So here's my thought process. We've talked about before with the WBC that normally there's a really well done job of like guys who have not gotten the opportunity getting their opportunity. So I'm actually going to lean towards Gunnar Henderson having a starting spot in this lineup. And I say that from a standpoint of, I think that he has more than the capabilities to play second base. And I think due to the fact that he just hasn't been on a WBC roster before, he's played well of late, he's healthy enough to be on the roster, I think they may give him an opportunity to be part of it. I think third base is a really big, the big question, because neither Austin Riley or Matt Chapman have been on WBC rosters. And I think both of them well deserved to get their opportunity. They've been pros for a long time. I think you could see either of them getting the opportunity to be the third base starter. I think, like you alluded to, this is a really, really good list of guys. I expect this list to comprise, in my opinion, of most of the guys who end up making this roster outside of the catchers. And that's where I stand at the current moment. One that I talked about a little bit earlier with you was I think Bryce Terang really did earn his opportunity if he wants to be part of this roster. You're always going to need a good speed guy who can play multiple different positions. Terang has showed he could play second, short. I'm sure he could play third if you needed him to. So I do expect him to be a left-handed bat that they give an opportunity to. But really excited overall to see where this goes. Extremely excited for the WBC. But Flax, let's have a little fun with this. If I told you the United States 4-man starting rotation, who's already headlined by Mr. Paul Skeens himself, then consisted of Tarek Skubal, Logan Webb, and Garrett Crochet, how would you feel?
I would like our chances. I mean, talk about some of the best pitchers on the planet. What's crazy to me, right, is like you just said those four. We're not even talking about guys that started games in the World Series.
I know.
Like we're talking about some of the best pitchers on planet Earth. Not even talking about Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow, just elite arm talents. Logan Gilbert is absolutely up there. I mean, some of the names that will get left out here, because there's bullpen guys that are really good at doing the bullpen job, and you can only carry so many pitchers. You're obviously, if you're going to plan on running a 4-man rotation, you're probably going to still keep 2 extra starters and have access to a quote-unquote 6-man rotation, or if somebody doesn't go well or if somebody gets hurt, You want to be able to throw a starter in there and not have to go long relief on a guy, especially if you have the ability to, do that. But there's a lot of really good American relievers as well that are going to take up those relief spots. Louis Varland's probably just been throwing an inning every single day in preparation.
I'm gonna give you my dark horse to be one of the starters that you see.
Let me hear it.
I think there's a high probability we get to see Kevin Gausman wear red, white, and blue after the way he pitched this year. I think he's the right type of guy for a roster like this, a ton of experience. Does he, at the end of the day, depending on the powerhouses that are brought in, because one of the big notes that everybody needs to know about the WBC is there was a high emphasis on getting the best American starters in the world moving forward. And for this WBC, we've had some amazing starters in the past. That is not a negative towards the guys we have had. But at the end of the day, teams have kept some of the highest end talent from getting an opportunity to play in the WBC. So I do expect this to be a powerhouse rotation. But Kevin Gausman, I think, has really, really earned his opportunity, is a great veteran, an awesome presence to potentially have around, in my opinion. I expect him to be wearing red, white, and blue come the start of this WBC.
No, I agree. I think it's going to be fun to see how these pitching matchups line up. I think what's also always really fun is people don't recognize all the pitchers that are in baseball that are really, really good can represent other teams and other nations because of one reason or another. It could even be as far as someone they're married to, someone deep in there that they've earned citizenship through, or someone deep in their histories, in their family history that has gotten them granted some level of connection.
For sake of saying
really
it, Bo
cool.
Bichette, great example. Bo Bichette already committed to play for Team Brazil, right? Like it's a really good example of the situation.
Brendan Donovan, if he wanted to, could play for Team Germany. He was born in Germany. He also comes from a military family and very much wants to play for Team USA. So, take that as you will. But there are a lot of guys out there that you'll get to see play for some different teams. I think it's going to be a really well-rounded tournament to begin with. I'm really excited for it. I'll talk about it later, but it bugs me that I don't even think half of baseball fans know that the WBC is happening this year.
Moot point, and we will talk about that later, like you said. I'm going to leave everybody on the WBC piece with this. Major league teams are starting to understand how important this event is for our sport, and they are starting to kind of pull back the reins and allowing guys to have the opportunity to play in these events. As you see this happen, understand that for the expansion of baseball and for baseball to be what we all want baseball to be, this is an extremely important step for major league teams to take. So I'm very excited for this year's WBC. I just can't say enough about it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Flax. The Seattle Mariners. The Seattle Mariners.
Jerry Dipoto.
They decided that they were going to open the bidding this year and take Josh Naylor directly off the market. Naylor was excellent for them coming over at the deadline from Arizona. We're talking about a guy who has already been a very solid player, had an excellent year last year from an overall standpoint. A little less power than people expected, but hey, guess what? Dude stole 30 bases. He hit 295, 353, 462. He had a 351 WOBA and a 128 WRC+. Josh Naylor, known stud, will now be in Seattle for the next 5 years. And oh, by the way, Flax, I don't know if you knew this, but it's really hard to hit in T-Mobile Park. And Josh Naylor in 26 games said, no, it's not. He hit 360, 408, 607, 5 home runs, 7 doubles, and 6 stolen bases. What a move for the Seattle Mariners at 5 years, $92 million.
Yeah, I mean, listen, when it came out, nobody knew what the money was. My guess was $90 million. I thought in my head, my biggest thing was, I don't think he's going to earn more than Cal Raleigh. Cal Raleigh makes about $17.5 a year, I believe. It's $105 million over 6 years. I thought if he was going to make more than him, it was going to be marginal. It turns out it kind of is marginal. It's about $1 million a year in the grand scheme of things. Cal Raleigh got an extra year. That's that's more money for him when it's all said and done. But I think for a guy like a Josh Naylor, it was also based off of other first baseman contracts. So I looked at Christian Walker, who, despite being a little bit older, had a lot of value last year, both defensively and offensively, which is something Josh Naylor also brings to the table. And he was signed for 3 years for $60 million, $20 million a year. So my thought was that's the baseline. If Naylor gets his 5 years, $20 million would be $100 million, and then I back down $10 million off of that, about $2 million a year to bring him down to 18, to where I thought it would make more sense for getting those extended years. Turned out to be a little bit more than I thought, but right around it, Jerry Dipoto doesn't really sign contracts longer than 5 years. Cal Raleigh for 6 years is unique. We don't really see him give out contracts of this length, especially to guys who aren't necessarily marquee names. Robbie Ray received one at one point from him. I'm trying to think of who else received a Mitch Garver, I think, received a high AAV one from him at one point. But this is not a normalcy for Dipoto. So they very much saw something in Naylor being more, I think, an ambassador for Seattle and an ambassador for this organization over a 5-year period to entice more people to come and sign here, right? There's other guys that are still in the free agency market that were a part of this team at the end of last year that Naylor got really close to really quickly. Having a guy come back like that on a deal like this shows the Mariners are willing to make the investment because they believe they have the core in the team they want right now to do the thing. They have the starting staff for another 3.5 years as it exists today. Some guys longer than others. You have J-Rod long-term, you signed him. You have Cal Raleigh long-term, you signed him. And now you have Naylor. The likelihood that you can go find those extra pieces, leverage what you have waiting in the wings in your pipeline, and push this thing for a good long while is reality right now. There's more money that needs to be spent this offseason, but doing this early tells everyone else you're willing to do it. Tells everyone else you want to be a part of the conversation, and every free agent's ears just perked up knowing that Jerry Dipoto is willing to come to the table with an open checkbook.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say enough about how much I love this move for them. From a player perspective, we know through interviews and through what other players have said, and Josh himself about his work when he got to Seattle, how important he was to the run that this team made, how important he was to the clubhouse, and then how impactful he was to boot on the field on a regular basis, right? There was multiple different games where he was by far taking the best at bats of anybody in that lineup, no question. So I think, one, this is huge from them from that perspective. I got to give Dipoto a ton of credit here. I really love what he's doing from a roster perspective at the current moment, right? At the current moment, if you guys look at it, and I did a little bit of my own research on their spending habits and patterns, the most that they've had as a payroll to start a year over the last, actually I think it's their entirety of a franchise, is about $157 million as a 26-man roster to start the season, right? We're talking about right now, he's got somewhere between 25 and $30 million of room to still spend to get to that number. And when your team makes the LCS the year before, there's a high likelihood, knowing you're in the window, that ownership might be a little bit more functional. So let's give the Mariners a potential $35 to $40 million of additional money that could be spent this offseason if they feel is necessary. This gives them the opportunity to do a lot of different things. You could go look at a guy like Jorge Polanco, who currently by Spot Track is estimated around a market value of $14 million, and bring him back because he's already been part of the clubhouse to play second base for you, or third base, depending on your scenario. Eugenio Suarez, still in the picture. Another guy who's looking at around $14 to $15 million in overall spend. You have the ability to go bring a guy like him back if that's the fit you want. They have a lot of solid internal options. Cole Young, their top prospect, Cole Emerson, can play either of the positions that are going to be their biggest areas of focus probably for the rest of this offseason from a bat perspective, which is second and third. And Seattle has been a team who has explored the international market in the past. You've got guys like Munetaka Murakami, who is a high upside, low floor potential play. You've got Kazuma Akamoto, who could probably potentially fit maybe even a little bit better here as a very well solidified defensive third baseman with a bat that you expect to translate at least at a slightly above average major league level. I think there is so much room for the Mariners to move. And the thing that we're not talking about at the current moment is the one thing they're not worried about is their starting rotation. What a great job by Dipoto and team to have a surplus of starting arms that now allow you to focus on what's always been the most difficult thing for Seattle because of T-Mobile, which is focusing on how do we bring in impact bats that fit our roster. I love what they're doing right now in Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, and if I'm seeing it correctly, it looks like the $92.5 million includes a full no trade clause. It also includes a $6.5 million signing bonus. I'm always confused at the way that's worded. Is it 92.5 inclusive of the 6.5?
Yes.
Or is it 6.5 on top of the 92? Okay.
It should be total value, and then the signing bonus comes out of total value in most
that
scenarios.
breaks it. So that brings it down to 86. Yeah. 86 over 5 brings it down to around 17 a year. Again, right? I mentioned Cal Raleigh's contract. There is a world in which I felt at the end of the year the Mariners had backed themselves into a bit of a corner with Cal Raleigh. Obviously, his contract is very team-friendly when it comes to how much he's actually making per year. It's backloaded, where his last 3 years he's making double what he's making the first, 2 of the first 3 years. What's really nice about it when it works out is if you can spread that wealth and have 3 or 4 guys making the same, you can have a really good roster. I just think it's hard to go pay somebody every year more than you're paying Cal Raleigh. But Cal Raleigh's last 3 years, he'll make $24.5 a year. So he doesn't really care what the AAV is against the luxury tax. I assume Josh Naylor's will be spread a little bit more peanut butter across the 5 years, with that $6.5 million signing bonus being a larger cash infusion on day one. But it is, Cal Raleigh had $105 million over 6 years that included a $10 million signing bonus, right? It's so much about how you choose to break it down. It all hits the luxury tax. The benefit of it is you're still going to fall way under that. Even if you add this money on top for other players that we've talked about, the guys that you mentioned, they just have so many young upside players right now that adding on some depth to go with it, it's really going to be impactful. The question will be whether or not the second base hole continues to exist that Jorge Polanco filled last year, or if the curse is officially broken and they can now bring a young guy to play that position every single day and be successful.
Yeah, a couple of names I want to bring up, too, that I didn't on the second base front that I think could potentially find themselves in Seattle that make a lot of sense. One, it's a name that everybody's hot and cold on because it really depends on how analytical you are at the end of the day. I think Luis Arraez is actually a really solid fit for them at second base. Guess what, guys? T-Mobile Park doesn't affect Luis Arraez's ability to put the barrel on the baseball. And all you're looking for is guys to be on base in front of the meat of that order who's going to drive him in most of the time. Another really nice upside play for them, I think, could be Thairo Estrada. Was hurt all last year. His market value is relatively low. I would love to see them, if they don't want to spend as much money because they have Colt Emerson, because they have Cole Young, because they have Ryan Bliss, I think he would be a really nice 1 year, $2.5 to $4 million signing for them, that at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, they had young guys that they wanted to give an opportunity to anyways. But again, a lot of upside there because Estrada has proven that when healthy, he can be a somewhat impact bat at the major league level. So it'd be fun to see that potentially happen as well. Just
if you're looking for something that's a little bit more utility and who's been around the block a little bit, and Adam Frazier might not be a bad play. He's probably going to cost you $3.5 million, but he played a good right field last year for the Royals, but he also plays a really solid second base. He's a bat-to-ball guy. He's just, he's not going to be a game changer, but he's going to be an innings eater. He's going to take good at-bats. He's going to be a professional in the dugout. He'll fit into any clubhouse really well. It's a matter of how they really want to construct the roster and how many guys they want to have available that can play multiple positions, or how much they want guys to kind of follow the Braves model under Snicker at the time, where, you had 7 guys playing 162, or at least 160.
I like the Adam Frazier call out. Now, you may not remember this because it didn't go well. He did have an opportunity in Seattle, and it didn't go the way people wanted it to. So I could see him as a high-end bench batter, a guy getting a roster invite. The only reason I didn't go that route, though, is because I think their depth within the infield, with Bliss, with Young, with Emerson, I expect them to take that guy internally, or, hear me out, Dylan Moore, because they love him. So it's just kind of how that works.
Dylan Moore came into last season just absolutely jacked, and then also hit really well out of the gates, and everybody was like, finally, there he is. And then it just wasn't that all season. And everybody's like, wow, I don't know if we can trust the guy. Listen, baseball's a hard game.
He plays every position on the field, guys.
Right.
There's a reason why he's going to have a roster spot for a long time. Absolutely. I actually
see him play, and I'm like, that's Chris Taylor.
Just a little shorter.
Barely. Chris Taylor's just skinny. Chris Taylor's just skinnier.
Isn't he like 6'2"?
Who, Dylan Moore?
Chris Taylor.
Let's see how tall.
That wasn't a knock on Dylan Moore's still taller than me. It's not a knock on him. It's just
CT3 is 6 feet tall.
Oh, there you go. I'm wrong.
And Dylan Moore
is probably 6 feet tall too. I bet you he's listed at it.
Is 6 feet tall.
Wow, I'm just wrong. All right,
I told you. I'm telling you, Chris Taylor's skinny. He's a beanpole. He just looks tall.
It makes him look tall. All right, fair.
It's the pants up and his lanky body. He plays taller than he is.
I love that. Good for him. That's awesome. What a great...
I think every guy on earth would love to play tall. I think even Victor Wembanyama would love to play taller than he is. I mean, take what you can get.
I love it. Let's finish this off with a very easy question. Good deal for both sides. Just Josh, just Seattle.
I think great deal for both sides. I think if Naylor is only 3/4 of what he was last year, all in as a player, but he is double what he was on the bench, you're getting the best possible option here for 5 years. I think the only hard part about the contract is that the no trade clause exists. So the ability to move him is tough. But the reality of the situation is I don't think you're going to want him or want to do that. I don't think he's going to want to do that. In 5 years for him, he's still setting himself up for getting, if he plays really well, getting another contract later in his career that is going to be worth something. He could get the Christian Walker contract at the end of this contract if he really wanted to. So I think good move for both sides.
I would agree. Good move for both sides. I think we've talked about this. There's a high likelihood that this guy becomes an ambassador for Seattle for a very long time. Again, getting to spend time in Cleveland, getting to see the maturation of Josh Naylor. He has always been considered this type of clubhouse leader. He's always been an energy guy. I love what he brings to the table. I think at the deal they got him for, 5 years, $92 million, it was very fair for both sides. Good move for Seattle. Good move for Josh Naylor. I love it. Flax.
What's next?
It's just final thoughts, man. And I know you have some. So I'd love to hear.
Yeah, my final thoughts around the World Baseball Classic. The same team that owned the TV rights to the World Series that had 50 million people watching it also, I believe, have the TV rights to the World Baseball Classic. Would have been a pretty easy thing to just add in every single commercial break. Hey, don't forget, the next big thing in baseball in February, the World or March, whatever it is, the World Baseball Classic. Nope. Didn't even mention it. To, by the way, a World Series that included and would have been viewed by 3 of the largest impactful nations in the game of baseball. Japan, Canada, and the USA. No advertising at all. God forbid people know it's happening.
But Flex, did you know that Shohei Ohtani's up in 8 batters?
I have been seeing a lot of reels on Instagram of people that are visiting Japan, and they'll be like, I see this guy more than I see the people I'm traveling with. And it'll just be every street corner is some advertisement with Ohtani.
That's awesome.
Advertising.
I love that.
He is everywhere in Japan. on every
that.
street corner, in every picture. I mean, the guy, you think the Dodgers pay him a lot. He's got to be making twice that in advertisement in Japan. I don't know the exchange rate, but it's got to be double.
And if we have MLB advertising listening, this is what should have happened with Mike Trout like 10 years ago. So let's not miss this time around, guys. Please.
And I don't want to hear Rob Manfred say, "Well, it's a two-way street." No, it's not, because you've done plenty of advertising with Shohei's name, image, and likeness without actually having him there be a part of it. You've entered into many a contract with the companies that Shohei does advertising with. Mike Trout also did advertising for the companies that he was tied to. Those were not consistently run on your channels or on highly televised national channels. So I don't want to hear about it being Mike Trout's fault.
Paul
It falls
Skeens.
on the advertisers.
Paul Skeens, SOS, save our ship. We know you're a
Has
military
anybody
guy.
ever been less excited about Cane's chicken?
Yeah, but like he still enjoys doing. He does them. Listen, Livy's
the funniest. I think that's
got
part
our
of the
back.
charm.
Flax. Livy's got our back.
I think she has her own contract with Cane's. I'm curious who gets paid more by them.
I'm more so
be her,
meant
to be
that
honest.
I'm more so meant that Paul will do advertising because Livy will think it's great. Like that's really where I was going with that. But hey,
Oh yeah, she'll put him in front of the camera.
I mean,
He's slowly but
hey,
surely starting to smile more.
he was much more excited about the Cy Young. We got a little one of these from him.
We
For anybody
did.
who
What's
can't
your-
see that, there was some nice little fist bumping from Paul this
What
year.
was what's your final thought this week?
My final thought this week is homegrown to DC. A lot of reports coming out that the Nationals are going to retain Sean Doolittle. I think this is really, really big for our organization. I love to hear what Butera and Taboni said, which is Doolittle was basically the most talked about guy within the coaching staff, unsolicited by the players.
Wow.
So having the understanding that we need to find a place for this guy and stating you will today during Butera's press conference.
His initial press conference
was
today.
very, very important to me. They've basically stated exactly what I think many Washington Nationals fans have known, which is Sean Doolittle is there for one reason and one reason only, and that's to help the pitching staff and anybody who comes through the org be the absolute best pitcher that they can possibly be for us. He's not worried about position, he's not worried about title, and he's not worried about money against what they said. He's there to truly be an ambassador for our rotation, our pitching staff. So at the end of the day, shout out to Taboni and Butera for calling it out today loudly and stating we're going to find a spot for him. And then shout out to frickin' Sean Doolittle for being the man, because that's really what this is. So there you go.
I love it.
There you go.
I love it. It's the off season, baby.
We're here.
We're here. We're actually we finally get to talk about a lot of the interesting stuff. It's so funny in the off season. We always say, I can't wait for baseball. And then it feels like we're just reiterating everything that people are watching with their eyeballs. And I'm like, I don't think this is really fun for anybody. And now we're on the flip side of talking about the exciting stuff, the roster construction, the contract values. I think this stuff's way more fascinating for fans in the offseason, more than people realize.
A lot of creative content coming from us over here on Baseball and Stitch this offseason. Stay with us, hang out, share the podcast with your friends. As always, come say hi to us on socials, whether that's X, Instagram, or TikTok. And of course, we're around every single Tuesday to hang out with you guys or whenever you listen. But past that, welcome to the offseason, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great week.